with the advisory members, Regent Herdink,
Here.
Regent Witten, Chair Stevens,
Present.
Vice Chair Martin,
Here.
Secretary Fletcher, Brittany Bogard, Kimberly Green,
Here.
Regent Jackson,
Present.
Regent Rabinowitz. Okay. Our quorum is 4 members, and we have 1, 2, 2.5, 3. Okay, we have a quorum. We were able to proceed.
All right, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of August the 31st. If you would review those quickly, and we'll be able to take any corrections. If not, I would assume Parliamentarian Duncan is they will stand as presented, correct?
Correct. We will do that by consensus. So no changes. They are approved.
Do I hear any? All right, Pam, we'll just ask for let's move on, please. Consensus?
Yes. We have consensus that the minutes are approved as provided.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is new business, the draft new board agenda. Hannah or Dr. Zarapata, somebody wants to take that away. The new format to talk a little bit of, let's look before we talk about the agenda. Hannah, if you will, let's talk a little bit about the new format where we'd like to move to with the consent of the board.
Yes, sir. So after our September meeting, if you were in attendance at the Council on Post-Secondary Education Conference, you heard, especially if you attended the AGB session of that conference on student success, you heard some people talk about the importance of keeping your eye on the big picture and always keeping in mind the institution's mission and vision. And of course, we just approved the 2022 through 2026 KCTCS strategic plan. So with those things in mind, I took a look at our agenda, our board agenda and how it's created, and offered a suggestion to move all of our items that are presented that require action or reports to the board and put them into the 3 general pillars that we're focusing on as part of our strategic agenda, which is increasing organization success, increasing employer success, and increasing student or learner success. And so you'll see that on Friday, our agenda is broken out into those 3 pillars with specific reports relating to each falling under those categories. I think this will help the board stay focused on our strategic plan and see how each report relates to those areas. I also have included, just as a helpful reminder for our board members, the KCTCS mission and the KCTCS vision at the bottom of the board agenda. It always helps to have those right in front of you as you're doing your work. And in line with what we've already done previously at some meetings, I've tried to structure Thursday afternoon. Of course, we usually begin at noon on Thursday, to include items where if you cannot be there on Thursday, you can only attend one day. The items that come before the board on Thursday will not require a action or a vote other than the approval of minutes, which is pretty standard, but wouldn't require action by the board. So we're going to have the open comment period, the chair's report, the president's report, and then the executive session on Thursday now, before we move into Friday's more robust agenda that requires conversation and action.
I'd like to hear, thank you, Hannah. I'd like to hear the comments from the Regents about this new format, pros and cons, how any way to improve it is. But I certainly want your input before we move forward with this. So, ever who wants to jump in first, just go and tell us what you think.
Chair Stevens, I would like to say I really appreciate this. It makes total sense, I think, to organize it this way. And sometimes there is a tendency perhaps to disconnect the dots, but I think this really frames and provides that boundary for us, gives us some room to work in and keeps us focused so that things look like they flow together as they should. And I just really appreciate the insight, Hannah, and the work on that for you and Chair Stevens. I think it's an excellent idea.
Kimberly or Joe?
I agree. I think it's a great format. I do have to say I really enjoyed how quickly the last meeting went. Thank you, Regent Stevens, for processing and flowing that pretty quickly. I'd like this to flow the same way.
Kimberly?
I agree with Regent Jackson and Regent Herdink. I think it will help us stay focused, and, you know, we all want to do what's best for the system. And so having that mission and vision and having it divided up in those 3 ways, I think that'll really help us stay on task.
Barry, your comments?
Let me unmute myself. Yeah, I mean, it looks good, and it's more, like everybody said, more focused. So if something happens that somebody doesn't show up on Thursday, not to be intense for the day, they will still be there for voting items on Friday. Okay, so will that shift the importance of being there on Thursday? Will that shift it, or?
Well, I certainly hope not. The one item that I talked to Pam and Hannah about was the closed session in reference to litigation. Sometimes those go really quick, and sometimes there are a lot of stuff to discuss and do that. So basically, I really hope not, but I know people have works and have commitments or so. Hannah and I and Pam also talked about trying to find a place to put successful, not only programs, but students before the board. That's one of the things that they recommended, is to come forth with either programs or student success. And, we do that a lot when we visit the college. We talk about that particular college, but we don't always bring students or faculty or so to bring to attention what great activities that are going on. We're kind of concerned about that, is because you don't want to take up an hour on that, is so. But I think that Hannah and I and Pam have talked about that. We think it's a good idea to work it in there, is, and whether each, if it's a college or so, has 10 minutes or so to make their presentation. And it's more of a celebration of success that's going on with a program, a student, or a college. And I see, Pam, you have a question. Go ahead, dear.
So I just, as general counsel, want to remind the board, it is important for people to be there on both days. And it's important to have both information items and action items. So I would caution all regents. I know that everyone has a busy schedule, and we are trying to find ways to streamline, but your duty of loyalty and your fiduciary duties require that you provide your attention for these items on these 2 days. And so this is not, certainly I'm not aiming at anyone in particular. I'm just saying that as a board, as a whole, and individual regents, that these are your duties. And so I would caution everyone to take both days as seriously as possible.
I think we'll just need to remind people that once you put that comment about, that'll leave things, if you miss on Thursday, that opens that door up. So I think maybe we don't emphasize that. It's just we put Thursday as being informational, and then we'll have all action items on Friday or something.
Sure. And I don't in any way want to frame it as that's why we've structured it this way.
Right.
But we were hoping that, if for some reason you do have to miss a day, you would miss on Thursday, we could catch you up and then you could be there for all voting items. But certainly both days are required, and everyone should make every effort to be there both days, especially with that executive session being moved to Thursday. I think all the board members realize what important work goes on sometimes in those closed sessions or conversations. Shouldn't say work because no action is taken, but conversations in those closed sessions.
Right. And I agree with Barry, and that's why we have Hannah and Pam and all the staff to word that in such a way. Every day is important, and basically is so. With that is, and I appreciate Pam's comment that, but we're trying to do. We're trying to make everything effective as much as we can. I see a hand up, Joe.
Yeah, I agree. I think the attendance is very important, but also along with that, all these items, I think, have a large amount of documents to go with them. Are we going to get like the president's report and all these reports a couple weeks in advance, or at least a week in advance, to go over and review before the actual meetings?
So we do, yeah, great question. There are, of course, a lot of reports. I don't think restructuring the agenda adds to anything that the board has previously received. It's just, it may look more condensed in that Friday. We are required to get them out to you 1 week in advance or as soon as possible by state statute and open meetings law. So we aim to get it out 1 week ahead of time. But of course, if we get things done sooner than that, we can post them and onboard. It's always a fine line between having the most relevant, up-to-date information for you guys versus the timing of it. But yes, there are certainly reports that we can get done and share with you as they are completed.
Awesome, thank you.
Stevens.
Yes.
This is Regent Fletcher, and I'm sorry I can't be on the Zoom, but I'm in clinic this afternoon and trying to do about 3 things at once as usual. But I do have a question about the agenda, and I like the new format, but I'm more concerned about it leaving out information that we are expecting versus not giving us or just changing the format in general. So I have forwarded a couple of items to Hannah that I had concerns about that were not on the agenda for December. I don't know if those have been added back or not, but we were supposed to be getting information from the Chancellor's office about the Online Learner Success Program and some other data points. So I just wanted to make sure that got worked back into the agenda. I do like the focus and the strategic plan outline. I think that makes a lot of sense, but I want to make sure we're not dropping the ball on any of the stuff that we're expecting to move forward.
Yes, and Wendy, those have been added back in. I added it under learner success. You'll get an update on the online courses in the fall enrollment report. And then I also added the ROC report to come under organization success, which you, I believe, will be giving. And then there was the cabinet conflict of interest statement you had requested.
Yeah, thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Any other questions? And we're going to go very brief, or how long it take. We're going through the agenda, of the items anyway, so I just wanted to share the format, see if it was agreeable with everyone, see if you felt like it met our goals and objectives. So, Hannah, if you'll go back very quickly to Thursday, and we'll look at some
And
of
while Hannah's doing that, I just want to give her a shout out for coming up with this idea to reformat the agenda. I think it makes a whole lot of sense.
Well, I guess I have a personal interest because Joe and I talked last time, and we had a couple of meetings last year on Friday that we didn't get done till 5 o'clock in the afternoon, your time, or 5:30 is, and we were driving home. And I said, we've got to do better, is what I'm saying is. So that was my challenge to Hannah. Hannah, we've got to get out at least, unless we have an emergency, by noon or sometime around early afternoon. And her and Pam and your staff, Paul, did a great job with that. So let's go through the agenda items, and Hannah, if you want to do this, or Pam, either one, and go right ahead on Thursday.
Okay. So on Thursday, we will start at noon. Of course, we'll be in the system office in Versailles. You'll see from your agenda that the open comment period was advertised on the agenda for our last meeting. But we will again put that on the agenda so that if there is someone who wishes to come and speak to the board, they may do so during this open comment period. They do have to be there in person. They must physically be present, and they must indicate ahead of time that they wish to speak and what their topic would be. That's pretty typical with any kind of open comment period, so that we can have a notice and be prepared to have them ready to present at the correct time.
Joe, you have a comment?
Yeah, how do you pick? I mean, I don't know if we're gonna get more than 7 ever, but how would you pick which 7 come through to speak?
It would probably be
Yeah.
first come, first serve.
Okay.
I don't think there's any way we could pick and choose. I think if we tried to pick and choose who got to speak, that would be an issue. I'm sure general counsel would echo that.
Yes,
about
that's
you.
correct. And Regent Herdink, we will be formulating a short procedure for this that will go with the board policies. But basically, in most governmental entities, we have a book for people to come, they sign up, so whoever is first, and they don't have to give the specific topic, but generally they could give an idea of what they're going to talk about.
But also, I would hope is if there's one topic, that's fine. If there's 7 people, but if there's a couple of topics in there, we've got to be sure that both of them at least have an opportunity. Somebody within those 7 can speak to those. So I don't want anybody to fill out, Pam, and I know you'll work on that. That's what I'm saying is, we ask them the general topic, and but if there are more than 2 comments or 3 comments that come, I would like us to be able, the board, to at least hear those comments brought before the board.
Okay, any other questions about the open comment period before we move on? So on Thursday, we will, of course, approve minutes from last time. Chair Stevens will be able to give a report if he so wishes about any items he's been working on, or he may want to update about the September CPE conference. And then we will go into the president's report where Dr. Zarapata will give an update on his goals and objectives, which were approved at the last meeting. And then we'll wrap up on Thursday by going into our closed session.
Any questions about day 1? All right, go ahead, man. Day 2.
Okay. And I should say on day 1, even though it's not on the agenda, we will of course have our annual holiday dinner at Holly Hill on Thursday evening, which I know Chair Stevens looks forward to every.
Us too. I mean, Papa does too. So yeah, I'll go ahead.
Everybody does. It's a great time. But then on Friday morning, we'll start at 8:30. We will move into these agenda items. The first heading being organization success. So you'll hear updates and reports about all things related to the organization. We'll get a finance report from Beverly, as we did at our last meeting. You met Beverly. We will have our external auditors present at the meeting to give a report about their findings. We will have.
Yeah, Hannah, I want to make sure, unless it's changed, I'd like for them to be there in the December meeting and in the June meeting, unless there's some change in that. So I think you and I discussed that, and I think you've told them that too. So yes. Go ahead.
Okay. We'll receive an update from VP of HR, Lynn Hillis, about the employee benefits survey that is being completed right now during our open enrollments period by all KCTCS employees. They are required to do that to advance in their open enrollment. So we'll have those results. General Counsel will present a cabinet conflict of interest statement, which we heard from Wendy earlier was one of the items she wanted to make sure was put before the board. So we will have that. And then Regent Fletcher will present a update from her committee that she chairs, the Resource Optimization Committee, what we call the ROC. She'll present a report about its work.
Pam, you had a question.
Hannah, could we change the cabinet conflict of interest to key and executive level conflict of interest, because it's not just for the cabinet, it's all PLT and other high level.
Yes. Great point. Thank you. We will have action. The first item the board will be voting on will be the internal audit plan. If you remember, we heard a little bit about this at the last meeting, and we will officially approve it at this meeting. Who's
going to present that?
We will have the internal auditor, and I believe Beverly Malloy will also present it in conjunction with the auditor.
Yeah, and let's be sure, and like we did before, is that I'd like to know ahead of time is that who's presenting. Some of them is the actual cabinet or a consultant, or some of them may be Dr. Zarapata presents, but I want to be sure that everybody knows who's presenting what. All right?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, Hannah, I'm not positive, but I believe the board has to vote to accept the annual audit in December. Is that correct?
They will vote to approve the internal audit plan in December, yes.
Okay, I'm talking about the external audit.
The external audit, they do not have to approve. They will just receive updates on it.
Okay, thanks.
Is that done in June? That external audit, is that final report due in June, Hannah, or do you know?
I do not know.
Okay.
When the final one is. I assume it would be before the end of the fiscal year, but I'm not positive on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am. All right.
The board will vote on required reserves. If you'll remember, in September, we got some information about the board required amount that the KCTCS and the colleges are required to keep in their reserves. I think it's currently at 3%, but there was some questions around what it should be, if that should be changed, what the colleges would prefer it to be. So Buddy and Beverly will bring back that information for a vote in December.
And I would like, since this has been an issue that we have talked about for several months and possibly years, that I know that all of these items will be attached, but I'd like that sent out, the recommendation in reference to the required reserve. So every board member has an opportunity to review that, even though it's coming in the action package. So, and if they have any comments, that they can contact Beverly or Buddy or you want, please.
Okay, great. The board will be presented with a code of ethics. Again, this was at Chair Stevens' request from a conference we attended over the summer. So I know that General Counsel is working on that and pulling in some resources and some templates and working on a draft to present to the board. We will present a revision on our board election procedures, and that is just because in the previous version, we failed to include a provision should the need for a special election arise, which of course we realized when we needed a special election. So we have revised those procedures and we'll bring them back for your review. And that should be a simple yes approval just to make a minor change for special elections.
I have a question, and I've asked Pam, and since we're going to bring this up, we might want to figure a way to address it. Is that, you know, there are certain procedures. Students are elected, and faculty and staff members, but board members are appointed by the governor. And the present in the old procedure was that if you're still on the board when the election, that you could run for an office. And I don't know, I just want, I'm not saying what we should do, but I don't like special elections unless we just have to, is what I'm saying is. So maybe that's something, Pam, that you want to look at and to see if there's nothing ever foolproof, but if we could avoid that maybe in the future.
Right. I agree. I don't see any, if we're going to continue our elections in June, I don't see any way to get around permitting someone who is eligible to be reappointed, because we just have no idea whether they will be reappointed. So there may not be any way, but given the fact that since 1999, we have not had to have a special election, I think that's a pretty good track record.
Okay. Joe, you had a question?
Yes, concerning the election procedures, I just want to throw it out there. If you don't know already, you can look at those now on the shared workspace for the policy and procedures for the Board of Regents. Those documents have been posted on there, and they're worth looking at and making revisions or asking questions.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Hey, Pam, I got a question. I guess it's just the recent governors been delayed at making appointments to the board because the timing is not real good. They, you know, if you're up for reappointment and the election is in June, and it's just like what we had, you know.
Right.
I think we've not had a problem with it, but is it because the governors have been more prompt at their reappointments and appointments?
No, not really. I think it's just been the fact of the people who have run have never really been in that position of potentially being non-appointed. Now, I will say when James Lee ran against Regent Damaris, or former Regent Damaris, that, you know, my position was the same, that even though he had not yet formally been reappointed, he could run. And so he did. And so we would have, if the roles had been reversed somehow, then that would have happened as well. So I think that the issue is the June board meeting, elections being then, but then by the same token, you know, our students don't get elected until right before the first board meeting, and that there's no way around that either, because you've got to have a full-time enrolled student. And so there are some logistical things that kind of put us in that bind. But I think again, I don't think that it's going to be an issue much longer. If we, or soon again, I guess I shouldn't say much longer. I think that every governor of every stripe, Democrat or Republican, they sometimes are very delayed on getting these appointments. And people just continue to sit until their vacancy is filled.
Right.
And another thing, board members that are appointed may not realize, your term, Lisa's term, did not expire until July. So, basically it's, I think it's somewhere around the 15th or everyone it is in July. So the letter I got when I was reappointed, I think goes through about July the 15th. So I just don't like special elections and we can avoid them is what I'm saying is. So with that, we'll move right along and we'll, with next item, Hannah.
Yes, sir. So the next item would be taking action on 403B plan enhancements. This will be presented by VP Hillis. She had talked about some things they were considering for our 403B employees who are in that retirement plan that would be positive enhancements for their policies. So the board will need to vote on those. And then the board will ratify the personnel actions just as it does every board meeting. And the last two items will be the naming of a West Kentucky facility in honor of previous president Barbara Veazey. And so they have done all the work around getting that facility named. And before they can move forward, it has to be approved by the board. And the last item will be taking action on Dr. Zarapata's contract. As you know, the board approved his performance annual review at the September meeting. And now it needs to look at his contract and determine if there are any changes needed moving forward for it.
And a clarification on that one is that there's usually a recommendation that comes from the executive committee, which is composed of Wendy and Barry and myself. Pam is working on some information that I requested from her. We have to notify Dr. Zarapata no later than, I think it's February the 15th, because we had a kind of a break in the 3 years and something contract. So that's what that is up there for. And I would, and as I said, the executive committee will meet and we'll discuss Dr. Zarapata's contract and any additions or things that want to be addressed. And we'll have consensus between the executives to bring that to you also. That's just something I'd like to get off of the table at the December meeting. So I just wanted to clarify. I know Wendy's on there and Barry is on there and on here now is. And so we'll be having a video conference sometime prior to the December meeting to discuss and go through with Pam some of the changes that she and I have discussed. Thank you, Hannah. Next item.
Yes, sir.
Joe,
I'm sorry.
You had a
Sorry, I
question?
feel like I have a lot of questions this session. So will that contract, will we get to look at that a week in advance, like with the other stuff before the meeting?
I do not know. I would hopefully yes, but I don't want to tell you something. No, I'm not going to surprise you either is what I'm saying is, but that's something that needs to be discussed with and you correct me if I'm wrong, Pam, and that's a procedure the executive committee meets and reviews the information with Dr. Zarapata and they make the recommendation to the full board. Am I correct in that?
So the contract actually, when it was negotiated, said the members, the executive officers or the full executive committee. And so now what we have is the policy and planning committee. So it can be either one of them. And what Chair Stevens discussed with me was to, he would like the executive officers plus Regent Finan to discuss the matter and then bring a recommendation back to the board. But you will have to vote on two things. You will have to vote on the revisions to the contract, so the new contract, and you will have to vote on an extension to the contract. So the term, I will put the term in there, but if you do not vote for an extension, then I will have to revise the term and we will put the other term. But right now, the contract carries through June 30, 2024. So what we would be talking about is a revision, an extension that does not take the contract beyond 4 years. So it could be 1 year, 2 years, whatever.
Does that answer your question, Joe?
Yeah, just like I said, no surprises. That's my thing. I don't like any surprises.
Well, if there's any, I will assure the board if there's any surprises, hiccups, or problems we have, I will notify you all individually, is what I'm saying.
And I would echo what I have agreed with Chair Stevens to do, is to revise the contract and put a cover sheet on the contract noting all changes, how they changed, what the rationale would be. And then that will be presented to the executive officers plus Regent Finan. And additionally, it will be part of the action item explanation.
Any other questions? Thank you, Joe. And thank you, Pam. Okay.
So moving on to the next pillar of our strategic planning is employment success. All of these updates relate to workforce solutions and how we're working with employers, and all of these items will be presented by Acting VP Jesse Shook. And then the last pillar is learner success, and we will have an update on program approvals. As you will remember, the board no longer has to approve new programs moving forward, but we do want the board to at least be aware of the new programs and what colleges they are occurring at. So you'll get an update on that. You will also get an update about online courses, as was asked by the ROC committee. So that information will come from the chancellor. We'll have an update on the fall final enrollment report. And lastly, we will ratify the college's candidates for credentials.
Joe?
And that will wrap up.
Yeah, one question on the program approvals. I thought it was, we didn't have to approve programs that are already in place at one of the colleges. I thought brand new programs we still had to approve, correct?
You are correct. I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you for that specification. Yes.
Any other questions? Go around there.
I would make the comment that when the policies come through about the code of ethics and the conflict of interest statements and all that, or any forms that come through like that that need to be signed, we're always attaching those back to a policy, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So I still think there's some room for us to do some updates to the policies and procedures. How are we doing that now? Is that just going through the chair? Is that going through general counsel? How are we supposed to suggest revisions or make changes in those that are still needing to be updated, or maybe new ones that need to be added?
Right. So if you recall, we passed you all passed the policy on policies. So there is a procedure in that policy for both substantive edits and for technical edits. The technical edits actually come to you for look at and decision, Secretary Fletcher. But for new policies, what you would want to do is to kind of go through the same process for revisions, where you would send in a request for that policy through our office, copying Hannah, and we would bring that policy to the board. But right now, just to give you a status, we are closing in on the administrative policy for the key employees on the conflict of interest. We also are looking at all of the board policies, so we are still revising those, and those will be coming forward. But because of a few of these new ones, we have kind of gotten stymied on that. So those all come through this office, the general counsel's office, and they follow the process that is in the policy on policies.
Okay, thank you. I just want everyone to be aware of that, because I do think there's still work to be done. And as we have these conversations moving forward about timelines and elections and, you know, codes of ethics and things like that, I think we're going to need a few new policies.
Pam, would it be possible we started this procedure a couple of years ago. Would it be possible to kind of have a scorecard of what we've done and then reference what's in progress and what we still have left to do from the original conversation we had a couple of years ago? Would that be possible to present that to the board? So as Wendy says, we know what has been done. We know the process. Maybe you're working on some of them are new policies, but we still have a ways to go. Would that be possible to have it?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Does that answer some of your questions, Wendy?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Hannah, anything else?
That concludes the agenda for December as it is now. Of course, if this committee thinks that there's anything that needs to be added, we're happy to do that. And between now and the board meeting, there may be one or two other items that pop up, but if that is the case, we'll bring them back to you and let you know that they've been added to our agenda.
Yeah, I think we have another meeting, and it's tentatively maybe on the 17th. Hopefully that if we have one, but that will be very brief unless there's a major item that's going to come up there is. So Pam, you had a comment or a question.
Yes, this is just to go back for the record to note when we took the quorum, Regent Fletcher was not present. She is currently present, audio only, and Brittany Bogart, I believe, is present audio only.
All right. Okay. Any other questions or comments from any of the members, Regents?
Paul, are you still on there?
No, thank you.
Yeah, Paul's still
Yeah,
here.
I'm here.
Okay. What is your thoughts? Does this cover everything we need from your perspective?
Yes, I think the only thing that I think we may have an update on is the RFP for resource optimization.
That'll come through the ROC report.
Yeah, that could come through the ROC report.
Got it.
If not, we will maybe reconvene on the 17th of November, and I'm sure Amy will send a reminder out. I want to thank everybody, especially Paul and his staff, and Hannah, a real nice special thank you, and so with Pam to get all of this done. If not, we'll have by consensus or a vote. Pam?
We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
and by
Second.
consensus, raise your little hand. All right, we are adjourned.
And Paul,
Thank
hold
you.
on.
Thank you.
You're standing
Yeah,
on.
I'll hold tight, Jan.